Hey everyone, I'm Ann. Welcome to the Let's Get Naked podcast, where we dive deep into vulnerability. In this space, we'll explore what triggers us, uncover the patterns holding us back, and discover how to take charge of our own growth. If you're ready to dig in, be vulnerable, and face the tough stuff, then buckle up. It's time to get naked. Why are we still whispering about vaginas like they're a federal crime? Half the planet has one, the other half came out of one. We will live stream our divorces, post our workout stats, share our green juice recipes, but when it comes to talking about our own anatomy, silence. Awkward laughter, code words, down there, or lady parts. What are we, middle schoolers passing notes? We were handed shame before we even knew what parts we had. Don't touch, don't look, don't talk about it. Cross your legs, be modest, be quiet. Be clean. Be desirable, but don't you dare be sexual with agency. Make it make sense. And then we wonder why grown women are suffering in silence. Incontinence? Oh, that's just what happens after kids. Painful intercourse? Maybe you just need more wine. Sexual trauma? Let's not make it uncomfortable. Can't orgasm? That's normal. No. What's normal is that nobody taught us how our bodies actually work. We learned more about long division than our own clitoris. We were educated on mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, but not the literal powerhouse of female pleasure. That's not an accident, that's conditioning. And here's the truth. Silence breeds shame. Shame breeds dysfunction. Dysfunction gets passed down like a family heirloom. We don't talk about masturbation, so women grow up thinking pleasure is optional. We don't talk about pelvic floors, so women normalize dysfunction and call it motherhood. We don't talk about trauma in the body, so women think they're broken when their body is actually protecting them. Your body is not disgusting. Your vulva is not dirty. Your pleasure is not indulgent. And your pain is not something you should just deal with. If we can have 47 podcasts about optimizing protein intake and cold plunging our faces at 5 a.m., we can have a real conversation about vaginas without blushing like Victorian housewives. Today, we're ripping the curtain down. We're talking about pelvic floors. We're talking about sex. We're talking about trauma stored in the body. We're talking about leakage, pain, numbness, shame, pleasure, all of it. Because if we don't normalize this conversation, the next generation of girls will inherit the same silence we did. And I'm not interested in passing down silence. So if you're uncomfortable, good. That means we're right on time. Let's get naked. Today, I'm stripping it all off with Dr. Krista Zelizney. I may have just butchered that. I'm so sorry.
It's close enough.
Okay. She is a pelvic floor and orthopedic physical therapist based in Phoenix, specializing in helping women address issues that should never be normalized. She is passionate about starting conversations around topics that haven't always been openly discussed and empowering women to find real solutions. Welcome to the show, Krista.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for joining me
Excited to
today.
be here.
Yeah, so this is Krista's first podcast, and so we're going to go easy on her for sure. So I'm super excited to talk about vaginas because I think that, God, we've just come from such a place that we just don't talk about these things. And it's surrounded in shame and things that it's like, who do you talk to about? Is it normal? Is it not normal? Is it all of the things? And then you're Googling stuff, and then maybe that's not the right way to be getting your information. So very, very, very grateful for you being willing to come on the podcast
I'm excited
today
to
and
talk about it.
Yeah, all the things.
I love talking about it.
I
I
know.
talk about it everywhere I go. On the way to music festivals, on the way. Anytime somebody brings up pelvic floor issue, I'm like right in there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And normalizing it, right?
Yeah.
Making it so that people don't
It's easy to
feel,
talk about.
yeah,
Yeah.
making it so people don't feel like they're alone or that something is wrong with them in
Yeah.
that. Let's start by telling me like how you got interested and passionate about what
Yeah.
it is that you do.
First off, your intro alone, I like one of those. There's like an emoji with the like microphone. It's like, say it louder for the people in the back. That whole
Yes.
thing, I would like print off and just like that was incredible.
Thank
So
you.
we could have ended the podcast based off that.
Mic drop.
But so basically how I got into it is, um, knew I wanted to be a physical therapist when I was younger from having physical therapy. That's like your typical like story you hear from most physical therapists is they got injured and then they got into it because they spent so much time at PT. I knew I was a people person from like a young age slash very empathetic because I'd watch like someone eat alone in a food court and like get emotional and like I
Mhm.
always wore my heart on my sleeve. So I know I could work with a population of people that like I wanted to also be able to interact and talk all day, but I couldn't do nursing because I was like, I'm gonna go home cry every day. So trying to find a balance, but with women's health I, like, didn't know obviously that that was a thing when I was younger, but throughout PT school, we learned a little bit about it, but even in PT school, you don't learn about pelvic floor at a great level. It's again just like woman and maybe woman with babies, but you kind of talk about it. And then I observed somebody and was like, oh my gosh, like I'd never forget. It was at a hospital based one, so she didn't really leave her room and do exercises. That's kind of more how I do things. But a woman came in, and this was in Florida, and she was like, well, I need to have sex for my husband. And I was like, no,
Right.
like, and I'm like 20, whatever at that age, 22. And I'm like, no, you need to like have sex for you. So it
Mhm.
kind of started to guide me in like this whole, like, we need to have I always tell my clients, like, yes, sex is such a big thing because I've had women come in and be like, "My boyfriend will dump me if I can't have sex," or like and I never wanna what is it? Like, not validate that it is very important for a lot of relationships, including in my own, and that, like, it is something that people can feel connected and all these things, but that you need to first have control over your genitals, and, like, that's my job is, like, let's make them functional and work, and you can choose how you want to use them, whether it's to have a baby, whether it's to have sexual intercourse without pain, masturbation, whatever you want to do, or like being able to go to the bathroom. Like, let's give you control over that and let you kind of go with that. So, the women empowerment side was like really what got me with that, which is also kind of funny because I grew up with a lot of guy friends. Like, I'm not a guy's gal, I'm all above, but like my interests growing up were also still very like male related,
Yeah.
but it's nice because then I can open up to all my guy friends and be like, "No," like, some of them follow my pelvic floor Instagram, which is awesome. So,
Which is
like yeah.
excellent.
So, it's definitely like pelvic floor, I guess, brings out a little bit more of my feminine side, which is cool because if it's a variety of that for me. But yeah, so that was kind of the initial like, "Whoa, people need help and they need someone relatively open-minded slash I would like to think cool to hang out with and talk to,
Yeah.
that they feel comfortable with their pelvic floor PT, that they can talk about these things,
Yeah.
which is cool because like a bajillion of my clients become friends or like they have me on my socials on my regular one and like we have relationships either outside or we continue on and it's like they're like I come to my appointment and you do something I don't always love or like but I love coming here to
Yeah.
talk with you or like this is the most heard I've ever felt or this is the most somebody's actually taken the time to like explain these things which obviously we can get into but like that's the disconnect is like I love being that person so that's kind of the getting into it. There's obviously experiences I had as I was younger that led me to knowing I was comfortable with this stuff, but yeah.
Yeah. Are you willing to share whatever it
Yeah,
was?
yeah,
Please
so
do.
when I remember because I grew up in Canada, so sex ed there was, like I wouldn't say terrible, like, I remember we got separated into the typical, like, girls and guys, and we got tampons and pads, and I remember getting, like, a diaphragm, I think it was, or whatever. I was like, "What is this?" Never used
No
one of those, but
idea.
I was like, "Oh," and then we got condoms, but I'm like, it wasn't because obviously your memories are still skewed from when you're younger, but, like, I remember even then I was kinda like, "This doesn't make me get, like, talking about it."
Mhm.
I had, like, an experience where my sister's 7 years older than me, and my first period, I played competitive soccer, and I remember, like, we have basements, so, like, in the basement, she had her boyfriend over, and I was like, open the door, like, "Come in here, like, I think I ran too hard at soccer," and she was like, "No, you have your period,"
Right.
and I was, like, 12, and then I think I had some issues in the shorts, and I was lazy, and in the morning, I grabbed those to bring to gym class, and they had my underwear in them that had blood on them, and I remember it fell out, and I remember, like, classmates, like, gathering around and being like, "Oh my gosh, what is that?" And I, like, felt so much shame, and then I think that moment or after that, because I am a people pleaser and I do care what people think. Unfortunately, it's gotten better as I've aged in life.
Mhm.
But I always was wanted that everyone to like me type thing. But everyone in Canada kind of goes through K through 8 in my school with the same 30 people. So
Mhm.
you've become, you know, these people. And I had the same teacher from like sixth, seventh, and eighth grade. So they were like a parent figure. But I remember at that moment being like, why am I so, or later, a few days, like, why am I so ashamed of like this when this is like a normal part of being like a girl
Yeah.
and like this is something we can't change, like we're going to have a period. And so from there, like my guy friends, again being close with guys, I kind of got used to the joking and things that it was like, no, why aren't I firing back? And then that even happens now with pelvic floor. Like I'll get the comments like with internal work, like guys will meet me and be like, or guy friends and be like, oh, you finger girls for a living? And I'm like, no, first off, that's gross
Right.
because there's no sexual tie to it. But then I throw back in them, who's been in more vaginas?
Well
So,
played.
yeah,
Well played, Krista.
yeah, not always a flex for some people, but,
Exactly.
and my, like, waxer and I always joke around, like, "Who sees more vaginas?" But theirs was even more intimate than mine, but, it was kinda one of those things where I'm like so I'd throw it back at my guy friends, like, "Yeah, I'm on my period," if they tried to joke, like, "Are you PMSing?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
This is why I'm a little
Yeah.
cray-cray right now, or I don't feel great." So that kind of moved me forward with that, and then growing into my own childhood though, like I was always felt like in regards to like masturbation, like my parents, I remember I first learned about sex because there was like a 60-minute special and I was like, what's rape or whatever? And
Right.
then we talked about it.
How old were you when that
I was
happened?
probably maybe around the same at 12,
Okay.
13. And they had said when I was even younger, one time at the dinner table, I came home and was like, "What's a blowjob?" And just like mid thing, they're like, "Great." But I remember them like explaining it, and there was never like my mom never made me feel like shame, and I was never shamed about like anything to do, but I guess we just never really in depth talked about like what is a labia, what is a clitoris, and like what is masturbation. Like that was never because there is like age appropriate, and I do feel it should be talked about. But I get there's like
Yeah.
progr- you're supposed to do it appropriately at different ages. But the more I've read about books and stuff, they talk about even from young ages with
Yeah.
like babies. There's like a sex book I had read that like babies when they're breastfeeding can get an erection, and moms from even get go will be like, no, and like the body stores stuff, but like and then young girls with like watching a show and touching themselves and like there's obviously no sexual tie yet, but like so running in and being like stop, but like having a conversation obviously like this is your own private in public or we do this in private whatever that may be for each family, but then some families don't have that talk
Mhm.
where I feel like for me like until I got into later adulthood or like my not even teens like 20s and you talked about with other girls that it was like, "Oh, the jet felt good on my area in the hot tub," or like, "Oh, a couch cushion felt good," and it was like, that was not talked about, and it almost as again was there's this shame of
Yeah.
like, "Oh my gosh, I used to do that, and I was so embarrassed," and now knowing or like a stuffed animal or a pillow or whatever, and then
Right.
it's like, I had this shame of like, "Why does this feel okay?" And then like, "Is my parent gonna bust in?" And like,
Mhm.
again, not talked about, vibrators aren't talked about, so like till I talked with friends and was like, "Oh, it's normal that we do this." It was like, "Okay." So that was interesting, but then also about my own privates and what they looked like, I think I had talked about this in my questionnaire thing, but, like, growing I lived in different places. I grew up in Canada, then I lived in Florida, and I lived in Arizona, so I moved a lot throughout high school. So I left Canada when I was, like, 15, 10th grade, and then 10th and 11th in Florida. Got, like, homecoming princess and then had to move again, and so it was just a ton of adjusting,
Mhm.
but it was always, like, guys, I remember one high school friend would be like, "Oh, beef curtains," like, that was a common term used for potentially a girl's vagina,
Yeah.
when in reality it's the labia, but yeah, it was
Sure.
like, "Oh, you probably have beef curtains," or girls have beef curtains," and pulling up Arby's photos and being like, "Oh, this is memes of girls' vaginas," and I'm like, ew, like and then so it made me be like, "Is mine not normal?" And then so yeah, and then it was like, "Oh, well, the more girls that or more guys that somebody sleeps with, they have a bigger vagina." And I'm like, "What?" And like I was sexually active at 16, and into college until I've been with my boyfriend for 11 years, but it and that's a whole other thing, but like their guys, how they talked about vaginas already was like I was scared to like shave and then I was scared to wear swimming trunks, so, like, or, like, a bathing suit.
Yeah.
So then I'd wear, like, shorts swimming, and finally grew out of that and was like, "I can wear a bathing suit," because of course, on top of not loving my vulva, I also had body dysmorphia with my just general body.
Right.
So then you just don't no one tells you, like, labias look different. I feel like that wasn't covered in sex ed of, like, there's the model vaginas or people see porn vaginas,
Right.
and then it's like, this is the model vagina. It's like, no, everybody's looks
Everybody's just
it's
completely
and I
different.
l
Yeah.
the come around moment for me with that was, like, when I took my pelvic floor course, my first one, they, like, make you go and I had never had issues with partners or anything saying anything, and, like, waxers or doctors would be like, "Oh, this looks normal," but I even, like, sent a photo to my not of mine, but of, like, an example vagina and to my mom and sister, and was like, "Does yours look like this?" And it was just, like, apparently it's hypertrophy of just your labia, but they were like, "Oh, no," and I'm like, "What the heck?" And my just body is dysmorphia, hyperfixation always manifests in, like, trying to take photos, so I'm, like, trying to, like,
Snap
position a
a photo.
camera. I'm like, so at least I've looked at it, unlike some people,
Sure.
but, like, trying to take a thing, and then there's, like, a Tumblr used to be a thing, and it was, like, 1,000 vaginas of the world was, like, a page, and in our PT program, a gynecologist spoke, and I, like, went up to her and was like, "Should I get a labiaplasty?" And she's like, "No, like, only if it hurts or, like, it's pinching."
Right.
And I mountain bike, so that's its own whole thing, but, like, she was like, "No, like, there's nerve endings and, like, they
Yes.
look different," and I'm like, "Are
Mhm.
you sure they look different?"
Mhm.
And then, like and again, I'm not in locker rooms staring or at friends like, "Oh my gosh,"
Right,
and
let me see
I
your
didn't have a friend group that,
let me
like,
see
went
your
around
vagina.
I don't know, guys might do that.
Right. Oh my
So,
gosh.
who knows? But, like, it was just I never knew, so I looked at that Tumblr page, I'm like, "Oh." But then I went to a course, and my pelvic floor course, they, like, make you lay on a table and just, like, open your legs, and you can't use a sheet. So they're like it's called tenting. So they're like, "No tenting today." And I'm like, "What?" My partner of my course is just gonna be looking just directly
Right.
at my
With full
vagina.
lights on. Yeah. Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah, yeah.
and it was actually right before COVID, but, like, so weird times anyways, but I lay down and I was like, "I'll go first because I always have been one of those people too that's like, I'll try things, so, like, in PT program, I'm like, "No, try that joint mobe or that, like, you can dry needle my face or you can do a mobe to my nose
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
whatever." I'm,
whatever.
like, always down to try stuff. So, then I, like, laid down, and it was such, like, an overcoming moment for me to just get over that, and then all of a sudden see everybody else, I was like, "Oh, these are" and I tell all my clients, like, because 'cause they'll even bring it up too, like, the whole and I know all women say this, like, "Sorry I didn't shave," or "Sorry I'm not super clean," or, like, whatever, or "Sorry if it smelled." I'm like, "No, rarely does it actually smell, but, like,
Right.
this is normal," and so I tell them it looks like snowflakes, like, literally, I've not seen a single vagina that looks like another vagina,
Yeah.
and when you get off the table, I don't remember what your vagina looks like, so I don't go home and I'm like, "Man, that
Right.
vagina." So,
So
it's
you're
like,
like,
"Man,
"And me."
that pain they were in," or, "Oh my gosh, they" like, all the symptoms or things they're having or who they are as an individual or the story they told me they're gonna go do on the weekend, people always laugh because they might come back in and I can, like, recall something from, like, they're gonna go do fun or something that happened in their family, but then I'm like, "Can I check your pelvic floor again? I don't
I
remember
don't remember
if you
your
were
pelvic
tense
floor.
or not." Yeah, so but that course, we at the end, we kind of all summarized the course, and I remember speaking up at the end, and I, like, cried because I was like, "This is such an overcoming moment that I'm, like,
Right.
finally comfortable with my vulva," and I'm like, "This is mine. This is
Yeah.
what it looks like," and that's fine, and I think, like, have you read Come As You Are?
Yes, I have
Yeah,
actually.
I haven't
Yeah.
got all the way through, but, like, the opening few chapters with Emily or whatever, she talks about, like, in her class she taught or something, like, telling her students, like, the first thing to do is, like, go home and look at your
Yeah.
vagina.
Get a mirror, ladies. PSA, get a
Yeah,
mirror. If you've never looked at your vagina before, go ahead and get a mirror. Get a mirror
yeah,
and know that there's nothing disgusting about it, that there's
exactly.
nothing that's wrong because you've seen something on
Yep,
porn that looks a certain type of
yep.
way and yours looks different. Like you said about the snowflake. That's an excellent way
It's
to think about that is
literally
we are all different. There's nothing wrong with any of it. And also the big takeaway for having you come on too is just if there are things that are painful that are not
yes,
working
that's
right,
not normal
that's
too.
not normal. Like
Yeah,
go see someone
yeah,
because you can fix that. You should not have to live with that
yep,
where it's like sex is
yep,
painful or, I think a lot of people don't realize that we store all of that trauma that has happened to us in our bodies. So if
yep.
you've had sexual trauma in the past or, have issues with that, there's ways that you can fix that so that you don't have to live with it.
Yeah, and I always felt like I still wanna validate my clients, especially it's harder to look at your vagina after having a kid,
Yes.
that seems to be for a lot of women more of the difficulty if it's like, "Ooh, it doesn't look the same," and to me, I'm like, "This still looks great," or then I, like, had a provider use the term "gaping vagina," and,
Someone said that to another person?
yeah, and, like, I've heard like, then there's just the line with pain of, like, "Have another glass of wine," which is, like, my biggest beef, but,
Yeah,
like, so he was a male provider, and he's a fantastic gynecologist, but
yeah,
just the verbiage choice, it's like, this was even a girl under her 30s or multiple women I've treated, so
yeah.
it's like, "Oh my gosh, I have this, like, hole," which is just so funny because when I did my course too, and I, like, looked at mine with a mirror, I'm like, "How is a baby gonna come out of here?" So
Yeah,
that was
thank
a
God I
whole other
never had to
so,
deal with
like,
that.
again, if
Yeah,
somebody's done that before and then after, they're like, "Oh my gosh, this looks so different," that I also wanna validate that, like, it yes, and you are so welcome or, like, it is so normal to feel now that this feels or looks different, but, like, you're one of many women that like prolapses. One of every like 2 women are gonna have a prolapse of some sort. And
mhm,
so, if you don't know what a prolapse is, it's when sadly your uterus drops a little lower, or your bladder pushes into your vaginal wall, or your rectum can, and it feels like you got a tampon falling out, or a balloon, or
mhm,
and it can be helped without surgery, but there is certain levels that need it. But like that's one of the biggest. Like, not only does it look different, and now women are stressed out of like it doesn't feel the same and I have all these symptoms, but yet their doctor didn't tell them they had one and I have to be the one, or like the doctor didn't tell them what to do next. It's like,
right.
and that's also what's kept me in pelvic floors. Like, it's very defeating that I have to get the responses that like, "Why are you the first one telling me this?" Or like,
Mhm,
"I don't make the big bucks." So it's
mhm,
like, why am which I love doing what I do and I do it for passion, but
sure,
like, why am I the first one to be explaining to you what a prolapse is? Or
right.
like,
Other people have seen your vagina, like,
a
that's a real
100%,
thing.
or that, like, you shouldn't have to pee your pants, or, like,
Right,
sex having pain during sex, no, you shouldn't just have to have a glass of wine, or,
right.
no, we shouldn't just put you on birth control for XYZ, like, it's just and I don't always blame physicians at all because sometimes they're given the resources that they have, and they no longer have time to dedicate to spending time with clients,
Mhm,
that they don't have the time to have these hour-long conversations, and as women, we like to talk, and we want answers, so, like,
yeah,
they their system doesn't allow them to stay in a room for more than 15 minutes. So
mhm,
if I have to be the one to get sent to, but then send them to me.
yeah,
That's my other frustration is like some countries, everybody gets a script for pelvic floor if
mhm,
you've had a baby. And it's like here, it's like, oh well, that's normal, you're 6 weeks, or oh, but why aren't we proactive? Like,
yeah,
why aren't we ahead of this so that it's not a bigger problem?
right,
So like that's my beef with it's just like send people if we Lauren loves this analogy. I say it in all my things, but like if we can teach a man to golf again without pain, why can't we teach a woman to not piss her pants when she's
right,
running after somebody, or
yeah,
can have sex without pain, or like it's an ADL. I always say too, sex for some people is an activity of daily living. So
yeah.
like if brushing your teeth and being able to put away dishes is, so is having
So
sex.
sex.
So
Well, and
yeah,
it shouldn't be painful. And I know that there's a lot of women who deal with that, don't say anything, they don't speak with their partner about it, which
yes.
seems um totally common and
Yeah,
outrageous to me all at
yes.
the same time, right? Like,
Yeah,
yes, that's how it is, and also how is that how it is? Like
yeah,
that just doesn't make sense to me.
yeah,
Even though I know that that's very common,
yeah.
but we should not be. You should not be having sex where you're in pain and literally just praying for it to be over. Like,
100%, because bigger is not
no,
always better. That's the other thing I always tell
no.
people too is, like, the vaginal canals are not all one size fit all for people, so, like,
Hmm.
there's interventions for that, but, like, with sex, it's very interesting because you're right like we talked about before, you had said, like, there is people that come from religious backgrounds that, like, is interesting with some of the Catholic population I treat, like, it just was not talked about at all, and then masturbation was not, so and just in general, and I know there's so much good in some religion and different things like that, so it's never crapping on religion, but, like, some people were taught, like, "This is dirty," like, "This is
Yeah,
gross,"
yeah.
so or this is not nor like, "You should not be doing this." So I have had clients where, like, they finally can have sex after if they've waited, and to each their own on whatever they wanna do, but then they come in, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm, like, not used. I'm still either having like mental block with this, and I'm really good at referring out to like do you and not in a attacking way of like have you thought about seeing a therapist, whether it's like religious trauma or sexual trauma, like early on in my career, it was very hard. Before I was at Streamline, I was getting a ton of trauma survivors. And like, again, I got into this because I'm super empathetic, but then I was just not only seeing a billion patients a week, but then also getting like slammed with like people that had been sexually assaulted at ASU and people by family members that were told, don't bring this up. And like, you're going to ruin the family. And like, I would cry like during the
Ruin the
session.
family.
Yeah.
Just so everyone knows, ruin the family.
Yeah.
We
Like,
don't fucking stay
I
silent
know.
about this shit
Yep.
anymore.
Yep. And it
Like,
was like, I could count probably like out of every 5 patients, 1 had been assaulted.
yeah,
And then
it's
like,
wild.
and then we do like we all do similar things because when I bring up assault, I always ask like, first off, you don't have to share this for me if you don't feel comfortable, but any type of trauma to your pelvic floor, a bad pap smear that they were kind of forceful, a time that you had sex with your partner that you really didn't feel like having it, and again, not assault, but more of just you didn't feel like having it.
Right.
So now your pelvic floor is like, this is uncomfortable. I'm not in the mood, and
Yeah.
that's a whole thing. And then you actually have like assault from either childhood or you have a medical procedure. I've had a lot of I've treated even 16-year-olds that can't use a tampon
Yeah.
because they had a hymen surgery when they were younger. So like there is so much realm with it that can be considered trauma. But as a society, as women, we also downplay what's happened to us. Like I in PT school, I had an incident where I wasn't assaulted sexually with down there, but like had a mishap with what was seen as a cultural thing where people were like, because I lived in Miami, of like, oh well, he kissed you on the mouth because he meant to kiss you on the cheek, and it was like a dishwasher at my business that was like 70 years old, and it was repeated, like, tried to grab my head, to kiss the side of my head, and, like, I thought he was just at first being nice, and I'm not the type to slap someone in the face, that's just
Yeah.
not my personality, so then I kept being like, maybe it's an accident," and then goes back, tries to, like, pull my head again, but, like, when I tell people about and then try like, it was just inappropriate touch, but for me, I'm still like, "Well, it" and I didn't have my boyfriend in Miami, we were long distance, and, like, I got told by coworkers, like, "Well, that's just the culture in Miami," and I was like, "Ooh, what?" So then it was, like, disvalidated, so, like, I do that for myself to others too, like, "Well, my trauma is not as bad as your trauma," so, but then in mental health with anything, like, somebody could go through something what seems really big to what you seem small, but in everybody's different life, like that's still big.
Yeah.
So like I have to remind myself with that too, of like it still affects your body. And like I felt gross. And like
Yep.
so that's something again to me that seems smaller. Imagine something big. And then I have husbands that use rarely sex as ammunition. And it's like, I'm not gonna do this until we can start having sex again, or like, I'm not gonna do this for our families too. Like, and then I've had partners come in and I'll, like, bring them in for appointments so that I can validate the woman and be like, "It's not that she doesn't wanna have sex with you or, like, it is painful, so she doesn't, but, like, this is what's going on. This is what the anatomy is." Like, it's hard for husbands that go through wives' pain with intercourse too because they feel really bad, some of them. Like, some of them that, "I'm hurting you," like, "I'm scared to hurt you now," and it's hard on
Mhm.
them too,
Oh, of
and, like,
course.
they feel really bad that they can't help, and so it's nice bringing them in and being like, "Well, these are the things you can do," and, like, figure out what works for you guys. Because I did wanna be also a sex therapist back in the day before I really fully committed to pelvic, so it was, like, nice I stay in my lane, but, like, trying to be, like, not every I used to say, like, "You need to warm up the oven," but then I realized not everyone likes finger foreplay, and that can feel weird for them, so, like,
Yeah.
figuring out what works for people to then make intercourse, like, a more positive thing again is, like, a big step even besides, "Is your muscle doing what we need it to do?"
Right.
But
Well,
yeah.
and also as women, just asking for what it is that you want. I think a lot of
Yeah.
people in relationships aren't comfortable enough to say, this is what I want. This is what feels good. This
Yeah,
is what
and
doesn't. This
they
is
don't even know.
right.
Because again, it wasn't talked about or,
Of
like,
course.
they don't know what has like, a big example is I tell people to get vibrators for, like, pelvic pain and, like,
Hmm.
stimulus and, like, being able to and then I educate that the clitoris is not just the little ball, but it's
Yeah.
the whole area, and, like,
Yeah.
people are like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah," because in anatomy books back in the day, it was, like, just always seen as the
Just the
ball
bean.
when it's, like, really a whole like, an organ, and so I tell them to get vibrators to help with tissue tension or scar tissue, but then I always have to be like, "You can use it how you want." And then I say, like, "You need to also tell," because some people are like, "Well, my partner's really anti using that." And I'm like, "Everyone grow up." But
Right. For one, why
But, like,
why
and,
does
like,
he get a vote? Just out
and
of
he said I can't bring
curiosity.
it up, but, like,
Yeah.
I had to I mean, it's just educating your own partner too of, like,
Sure.
then I always say it's a friend, not a foe. Like, it's
Yeah.
an assistant to help you, and, like, a lot of men don't know most women need
Right.
a clitoral stimulation to orgasm. So it's like
Also, it's not a hit to your ego, so fucking grow up. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think dudes understand that a lot of women do not climax with just penetration.
Yeah.
That is a real thing. And if you as a partner don't want your partner to be, climax or to have have pleasure, fuck off.
Yeah.
Fuck off. Then you shouldn't be with someone else. Like that should be your goal, is that you want the person that you're with to be able to really enjoy
And then
themselves.
there's people that can like ding get touched in the orgasm, and then there's more difficult. So like for me, I have hypertonic pelvic floor, so like I do have pelvic floor dysfunction as well, where like it is difficult for people to orgasm if they have a tighter pelvic floor. So like, and that's the whole thing is people are always like, "Ooh, tight, that's great," and I'm like,
Yeah,
"No,
not
tension is
necessarily.
not like yeah, you feel a little like there's not, it just feels the same, and then there's like tension of either the abdomen and stuff too. Of like people are like, "Oh, I want a 6-pack abs," and like, shouldn't this feel tight? I'm like, no, I can't even move your muscle. Like it needs to relax. So that's the misconception too with tight pelvic floors is like you also don't want over tension. But some women it is difficult orgasming. So then I'm trying to normalize for them too that like intimacy is seen in so many other ways too. That it's not, yes, orgasming is great, but like we also get so in our heads. Like I did go through that when I went through the labia chronicles as well of like, why can't I orgasm easy? And
Yeah.
like I was like, "You know what? Like, when I can, I can." And, like, I feel connected with my partner so many other ways and, like, because it can get defeating for a partner too of,
Yes.
like, "Why can't you orgasm?" And it's like, "My pelvic floor is too tight. I feel like I'm gonna fart during intercourse."
That's why, boss. That's
You
why.
know,
So
pee my
now yeah,
pants. So,
exactly. Now
yeah.
we're on the same page.
Yeah, so, like, there's different and that's, again, normalizing for women that, like, movies make it look like this big passionate thing and like some of my clients have to use their dilator and do their stretches and use a vibrator before they might have intercourse and eventually I want them to get to spontaneous sex but like it looks so different for everybody and that's okay especially if you have a baby in your room and it's not going to be
Right. It's
yeah
not going to be like fun, sexy time. It's like,
yeah.
yeah.
And there's this book I had read about a couples therapist, and like literally the first chapter is like get over the fucking fantasy, it says. And it's like talking about how like I mean, again, I've been with my partner since I was in my 20s. So you have all these like times when you first started dating. And then like for anybody, it's like you have these very passionate moments and that can change as you go and you go through seasons and all these different things. And the seasons things is what I have to talk with pelvic floor pain too, is like there's the religion, then there's the different trauma, but then there's also like what are you going through in your life right now that your body, like you said, is holding all this stress or tension in
Mhm.
your pelvic floor. And so I use the 3 circles analogy or like rings that like, does my body work? Do I experience pleasure? And then do I have connection? And it's like I can cover the does my body work, but like those other 2 rings might need to be addressed via someone else or each other. And like that also might be why your pelvic floor is not functioning well because you're in a such high tension state that like it holds on to trauma and the chakras and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Here's the deal. Your life isn't going to magically fix itself. Nobody's coming to save you. But you can learn how to save yourself. That's what this book is. It's a no BS guide to stop outsourcing your happiness, stop making excuses, and start living with purpose. If you're tired of waiting for someday, consider this your wake-up call. Someday is today. Get your copy of the Life Hack Playbook on Amazon or on the podcast website, letsgetnakedpodcast.com. I want to circle back to something that you said earlier about when you were talking about the different kind of traumas and your body storing that. So a concept that I've come up like has been on my mind recently is thinking about, we have sexual trauma that happens when somebody violates us, but
Yes.
we also have sexual trauma that happens when we've allowed something to happen to ourselves without saying no. And I think this is a very important topic to talk about with women. And I've never heard anyone talking about it. And to me, I think this is savagely important. I will use this example to just explain to the
Yeah.
listeners. So, say you have a situation where you're being sexually intimate with someone. Uh, say you didn't want to. You didn't want to from the very beginning, but you didn't know how to say no. So, your head is screaming or your body is screaming, like, stop this, make this stop, right? The man doesn't know because this is we ask for consent, which I'm going to fucking hammer that one home over and over and over and over and over again, how important it is to ask for consent. But back when I was younger, and also there's a lot of people that don't subscribe to that. As a woman, if your body is screaming no, and your mind is telling you don't want to make the other person uncomfortable, you don't want to make a big deal, you blah, 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 blah. To me, you literally have just violated yourself because you didn't tell him to stop, even though you wanted him to stop, even though your body wanted you to stop, right? It's a really dangerous situation because you can't vilify the guy in that situation
100%.
because he was just doing what he thinks feels like welcomed because you didn't stop it. But it doesn't stop the fact that you now have stored trauma in your body from that. Do you tell me what that brings up for you when I say that?
So I feel like it creates like an internal little bit of shame with it of like, why didn't I say something, or like, why did I do this? And like so examples, unfortunately, before I met my boyfriend, I had a couple of those in college and in high school where like someone who claimed to be religious had stood up after being intimate. I wouldn't even say intimate because it wasn't. And then standing up and being like, because I think I had like, even this is then what's the crappy, like even a tear came down my face. But I again didn't say like stop or no or whatever. And he stood up and was like, I feel bad because I've just been using you. And I'm like, so like somebody with body, I enjoyed having sex. And so I will never say that like I feel like someone took a part of me because but I do understand when people feel that way. But for me, I was like, okay, I enjoy this. But also like I do get connected to people. So like with body dysmorphia, or like value in myself, which now I really do. I've moved on to like I am not everybody's cup of tea. And like as I've gone into my adulthood and moved so many places, I really am like more confident in who I am. Does it hurt sometimes when I maybe a client, I'm not their cup of tea? Yeah, but like, or a friend, but like, it's okay. But like in that situation, it's like, oh, like the grossness also of like, wait, was I getting used? Because then I went through that in college of like, I did have a time again where it was like, I want this to stop. Um, I'm in a frat house. Like I got booty called over. I thought this person liked me. I even again remember kind of being like, this happens to so many women when you just disassociate. And that's where I had to learn as a pelvic floor PT too, of like never telling someone early on. I was like, when I'm going to do internal, like try to think of a happy or like, no, which is not appropriate because they cannot do that during intercourse. So like they can't do that with their partner or whoever they may have sex with. So like, whoops, like got away from that obviously. And that was pretty early on. Like, no, they need to be present. So I remember, and this can happen then, like, then I went through another and I like, he didn't walk me home. Like, I called the pledge to come get me and I just walked back. So like meeting my boyfriend, who's like the complete opposite of a fuck boy, is like, was the best. So, but we then like, then you kind of this dynamic of like sex being shameful, but then you also, there's women that like SSRIs and they're on like some type of medication, which is great. But I then went through a phase when I was with my current boyfriend of like just feeling numb and then like not feeling anything with sex because my libido was smushed. So then again, you're like, I should do this, I want to do this, but then during you're like, I call it dead fishing, but you're just like,
Oh my God.
but you're like, again, maybe you shouldn't be doing it because in one of those books, Come As You Are, it talks about like two different types of libidos, reactive versus whatever, spontaneous. But like the fact that our genitals can produce fluid and like seem into it, but our mental is not there. And that's very hard for men to understand because they're like, no, like you're wet. And you're like, but I'm thinking about my plans next week. And like that. So yes, you're right. And then you do like, because then you think, well, is the next time going to be like this? And this can happen for men too. Like it with libido, and you actually have to work on libido, and like it doesn't just come. But like, yes, that is like a stored, I would say, trauma if you've just put yourself through now, like not really feeling it, and then it starts to feel like a chore. And that's where I tell people, we're like, it isn't something you want to do, but you're just doing it for the other, or like, and I do get those comments a lot of like, well, I just found another way to please them or something. And I'm like, again, I get that this is like important. Intimacy is important, but like it also needs to be something that like you feel like you do want to do. So
I think that's hugely important. And I think women being able to realize that they have a voice in that and that it's okay to say no. also, like, being able to get intimate with your partner in a way that doesn't have anything to do with sex.
Yeah.
You know, I think that was a big thing that I learned after being with someone for so long, and all
Yeah.
of the different things that kind of go into that is intimacy isn't just what you think it is as far as just like getting down to fuck. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a it's a whole thing. There's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff that goes into it.
Yep.
And also, when you're plugged into your partner and you want them to be pleasured and you want to be plugged in with them in that way, that's so much more important than having it just be something on the to-do list that you have to check off.
100%.
So getting into diving into that as a bigger topic than just I don't want to do this. Like, no, figure it out because life is amazing.
Yeah.
Uh, don't leave that on the
And sex
table.
can be
And
amazing.
sex
So
can
it's
be
like,
amazing, yeah.
and that's where it's like there's resources for people now, or just being able to communicate about like this isn't so like in regards to actual pelvic floor and like pain with intercourse. I tell my couples like if they're not doing the spontaneous one, they've done their stuff, or say they are one day, because now the hard part with coming to pelvic floor PT is I try to remove the pressure of like every visit coming back and being like, well, did you have sex?
Right.
And like, was it uncomfortable? And then so like, or was it comfortable? And so trying to remove now the pressure of like, this is a new homework. I'm investing because my streamline is a cash pay clinic of like, I'm investing all this money into
Yeah.
this getting better. But so trying to remove and going back to again, does your genitals work? Because pelvic floor PT is hard. It's not always like, did your knee move a little bit more? Or did you leave feeling like your quad was relaxed? It's like, okay, well, did you pee a little less? And that's not going to go from 100 to 0. It's going
Right.
to go little bits. And so it's very progressive with that of like going along. So it can be hard for clients to commit to because you don't always see these big changes. But I always tell them with their partner, like, if you start having start intimacy and you're like, oh, this doesn't feel great, switch back to something else that like feels better for you.
Mhm.
And then like go back to that, or like try to do something that does make you, because again, that's you probably need to get a sex therapist on there, but there's like so, or if you haven't already, but there's just so much of the mental side of like trying to get into
Yeah.
the zone of like feeling good and like what works for you and the red lights and the green lights and all that stuff. But yeah.
Yeah, there was a meme that I saw years ago that just always made me chuckle because it said something about my vagina has a direct link to my ears, and it's
Yeah.
like, like it's more than just, oh, I'm in the mood now. It's like say lovely things to me, be
And
sweet. I mean, like let's
And
have
that's
all
what
of that.
gets different people
Yeah.
into their libidos too, or like feel good for their day, or dopamine rushes. Like for some people, it might be like, oh man, my partner cleaned the house today and now I'm suddenly feeling
Right.
in the mood. Or some people, they don't have that and they just are reactive. And when they do get stimulus or touched or contact, then like they feel good. But yeah, there is just so much around sex that is hard, like previous partners, obviously. And like what you want with your new partner. Does somebody feel comfortable talking about it? Or like, did
Mhm.
they grow up talking about it? Did they have sex ed? Or like, because on a different note, like we're not taught how sex works. So then, like at a young age, they tell you to use a tampon and use birth control. But then it's like, does somebody know what ovulation actually is? And
Yeah.
like, maybe if we started teaching about what ovulation is, and like, oh, this is the window you can get pregnant.
Right.
You can get outside of that, but like I feel like I didn't even know, like, oh, like, some people don't even know how Plan B actually works, so it's like,
These are all big topics that I don't think we
and
talk
again,
about.
not
Yeah.
talked
We,
about,
we, we don't
so
talk about it. And it's like, how are we as women not talking about these things that are savagely important to
yep,
who we are and what our existence looks like? And also like it really twerks me off because the organized religion component of it is a big deal for me because I was raised in Catholicism, and
okay,
for me it was when you talk about the shaming and the don't touch your body and like all of the things, yes,
yeah,
I had all of that, which is wild to me because it's like, why do I still have to deal with that as a woman in my 40s? Because there will still be things that come up that are just like old gross programming
yeah,
that's in there, but it's so freaking deep
deep,
in there
yeah.
that it's like, I don't believe in a God who gives you arms long enough to touch your vagina and then tells you not to. I think I call bullshit. Like
I know. That's what I used to say too, is like we have private parts there for more than just having children,
sure.
and like they're there for pleasure and to also be used. But then it is funny because every time you ovulate and you're like a little little horny, or like you have more energy, you're like,
Sure.
oh, my body's doing this. I need to go get pregnant.
Yeah.
But I'm such a promoter of like, yeah, these And because some people, like, don't want kids. So, like, yes, your privates and your genitals are there for pleasure too.
Yeah.
But yeah, the deep-rooted stuff is hard too, because like, it's one of those things where I wanna always be supportive for clients of, like, their beliefs and how it goes for them, but it's like, I have 80-year-old women that will come in, and I'll never forget one of them was from the Catholic. It's most times the older Catholic woman, but,
Oh, that's
like,
terrible.
comes in, it was COVID time, takes her mask, and I'm like again, I always make sure internal is consensual, we sign a
Yep.
paperwork. If they do give me signals like this, I'm like, "Okay, wait, let's back off," or if somebody's crying or getting
Mm.
emotional or it's creating a response. But I'll never forget, she, like, took her mask and was like, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I don't wanna see." Like, the same woman that were I was this way too, but, like,
Yeah.
"Shut the lights off for sex, I don't wanna see like, I don't
Yeah.
want you to see it, I don't want" and it so having the lights off can be more intimate, but, like,
Yeah.
these women I had a woman that, like, in her 80s that her husband's never seen her vagina with the lights on, so it's like,
She's
ugh.
probably never seen her vagina with
No,
the
she
lights on.
hasn't,
And
'cause
no
then I'll
judging,
no, I know,
because
yeah.
literally, like, I totally get it. I've seen all of the spectrum. I've gone through all of the spectrum,
Yes.
where it was, I have my own truckload of stories
So it is
associated with that.
the older I will say to give hope to everybody and you, it is getting better. But then again, that could be like where we located in the country and blah 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 blah. But like I have a lot of moms in their like 40s into 50s, and I feel like they are having conversations with their daughters a little
Okay,
bit
good.
more about like what is this stuff and what is sex and are you having sex and like because our generation is getting older and yours and everybody else that like we know what's happening. Like it's
Right.
so like
And we should talk.
abstinence is not going to stop this
Right.
anymore of
Right.
like let's teach abstinence. It's like let's teach again how a woman's body works and like again like we talked about pelvic floor related of like no pain is not normal and no having periods that you're freaking bleeding out are not normal and
Yeah.
like no pain like back into the whole other side of like incontinence of like I have so many women that come from their OB after and their OB. It's again, it is norm. So I say it's normal. It happens to or common should be more the word that it happens to most women, but it's not normal. We've been taught to just accept it. Like,
Yeah.
n- and does everyone's pelvic floor get fixed from pelvic floor PT? No. Some women do need surgery that could come from what are they doing at home. But like just no, you shouldn't have to live with this. Like,
Mhm.
peeing your pants when you laugh is one thing, but because that's pretty sometimes hard. Because I never tell people to stop laughing, but, like, n peeing your pants, just sneezing or chasing after your kid or jumping on a trampoline and, like, it's funny 'cause so many women joke around about it or crossing their legs or whatever, and I'm like, they don't know this exists still, so they're like, "Ah," I'm like, "No, I can help with that." They're like,
Right.
"What?" I'm like, "No, no, but there
No,
is
we can
someone you
fix
can
that.
see."
Yeah.
But then there's women that go to pelvic floor PTs and they've just been taught to do Kegels, like, over and over and over, and I say I'm not a Kegel queen because they have their place, but, like, there's so much for people that listen to this more to it of, like, if you go to a pelvic floor PT, you should be looking at your whole body, you should be looking at your foot, your hips, like, how's your pressure management? How's your breathing? Because like, most pelvic floor problems aren't even from sometimes having a weak pelvic floor, as the doctor said, a gaping vagina.
Mm,
It's from, like,
yes.
pressure management or hormones, and, like, luckily, hormones in the field is getting more talked about now.
Yeah.
But with that, now there's, like, doctors that promote these chairs you sit on, and they zap your pelvic floor, and, "Oh, this is gonna fix all of it," like, all these med spa type procedures, and it's like, "No, we need to learn if your leakage is not laying down on a table, it is jumping on a trampoline or running or doing a high rocks or like and that's so it's so different for everyone. It could be chasing your kids, it could be go competing in a high rocks.
Yeah.
And so you have to train somebody that way too of like, do you want to jump again? Let's do jumping and teaching you not how to pee your pants. But some people go to clinics that they just lay on a table, here do 200 Kegels a day, that's let me do some internal and that's it. So it's like women also deserve from a pelvic floor standpoint good providers as well because it's not always the doctors, it's like your provider as a pelvic floor therapist needs to also like look at this from a bigger picture too.
Yeah.
Because I've sadly had clients that have come from other pelvic floor TTPTs that like have said comments too that I'm like, so yeah,
Yeah. Well, and also understanding that you're worth it. You're worth putting the
the
energy,
time.
yeah, the time and energy and money that goes into
Yeah.
making yourself think about how much better it would be if you didn't have that issue.
Yeah.
I have a lot of women in my life who have done different things, whether it be, PT or surgery or whatever, where they've fixed things. And it's like just the quality of life that that
Yeah.
gives you back so that you're not constantly worrying, am I going to sneeze and pee my pants? Because sure, you can laugh it off with girlfriends, but at the end of the day, if you're walking through the grocery store coughing and pissing yourself, there's that doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
That isn't something where you're like, "Oh, I feel so,"
No, it's not a,
it's
"I'm
terrible.
pumped," and, like,
Yeah.
if we joke about it, sometimes that comes from a place of hurt and pain, so it's like,
Yes.
I not to toot my own horn, but, like, I have had messages come from people that are like, "This was life-changing," like, and that's always where, like, a picture of them running, they just went and ran a marathon, or, like, they the most special I have a soft spot for my pain with intercourse people because I've always thought so highly of sex and, like,
Mhm.
again, that it ranges for everybody and how often we have it ranges for everybody, because that's another whole discussion from a sex standpoint, but, like, I have I had one client that, like, she when she was coming to me, had been through trauma, had gone through quite a bit with that, had and was, like, working through it currently, and I even suggested, "I think you should see a therapist or try EMDR," and then was also working, though, from my end and, like, building a positive relationship with internal and a gynecologist appointment, because a lot of women I get, like, gynecology and pap smears are, like, brutal, or they've never been able to have one, or they've never used a I've taught women how to put tampons
Yeah.
in their sessions, and so, like, I'll never forget, it was a couple years later, and she had left her gynecologist appointment, I guess, and texted me and was like, "Hey, I just want you to know that, like, I still think about how I came and, like, you changed my view on all of this, and I got the help, and then I just had a normal gynecology appointment with a pap smear, and it didn't hurt, and, like,
Mhm.
how this basically was, like, changed my life, and thank you so much." And, like, yes, I thrive off good results and hearing compliments, but, like, it's so powerful for me, or on Valentine's, I've gotten texts being like, "I had sex on Valentine's," and so, like,
Mhm.
it's just so rewarding with that, but then it's also there's the heartbreaking side we talked about of, like, things that aren't getting better, like, I had a client have surgery yesterday, and I pushed and pushed and pushed, like, "See somebody for endo, see somebody for endo." She had endo all lit up on her inside, so it was like, if I have to be the teammate to help people also get to where they even if pelvic floor does not help, because 'cause I've had women in their 50s and 60s with like, pudendal neuralgia, then, like, zapping down there or just and I've tried everything, but in the end, they're like, "Thank you for listening. Thank you for finally being somebody that, like, listened." Like, that's the
Yeah.
biggest thing is, like, "Thank you for listening." And I always don't secondary as a therapist, but I get to hear all the tea on in-laws and all that stuff too. So I you go to you probably share a lot when you've been at PT. So, but, like, yeah, so that's the great part out of it is, like, even if somebody doesn't always get the results, they've at least gotten to the path they needed to be on with it,
Yeah.
so that's cool too.
Well,
I always tell women there's options, like, this is not a death sentence,
no.
like, surgery, yeah, is a not always the great resort for some people, but, like, we have options,
Yeah.
so, like, that's okay.
Well, just being comfortable enough to speak about them and not make it something that's so like shameful, right? It's not
Yeah.
supposed to be that way. Will you share with me about your body dysmorphia? Are you willing to
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
about that?
yeah.
I'm not familiar with that in general. I feel like I have women in my life who have mentioned that, but I don't know a lot about
Yeah.
what you
Yeah, so
struggle with it.
mine was never, like, to a full extent of, like, I didn't have an eating disorder. I had a bad relationship with food, I would say, because, like, some of my lunches my mom didn't necessarily make my lunch, I could do that myself, but I, like, would come to school sometimes with, like, the ramen, I'd, like, crunch it up and eat it as, like, chips or whatever.
Yeah.
It'd be like that and, like, a cheese stick or something, and then I just never had a good relationship with food of, like, I didn't binge or do anything like that, like, grew up have a sister 7 years older than me. She's always been very petite as well. Now I understand the concept that, like, I also can wear a medium at Forever 21, but I never understood, like, "Why are we the same size?" But now I'm like, "Oh, I am the same size as some 14-year-olds." I don't know, it's a weird concept, and I also don't now I'm in the stage of I'm like, "Where do we shop?" Because like, my age group right now is like, "Where the heck do I get
I know, isn't
clothes
that
from?"
terrible? You're
It's
still like
like
you're not like 21, but you're
yeah,
not 50 either. Yeah.
yes, so, thankfully, I wear workout clothes all the time because of Streamline, but I grew up with, like, young age, I was never overweight. I was very active. I played soccer, I ran track, played outside a ton. Like, the backyard to my house was, like, the elementary school, so, like, was
Mhm.
constantly outside, but I s was pretty muscular pretty young. Like, I've had these thighs since I was probably, like, 13, they started growing, and people will
Mhm.
be like, "Do you lift do you squat, like, 3 times?" I'm like, "No, this is genetics, part of this, I am strong," but, like, I just had really thick legs, tree trunks, and back then in 2000s, it was like thick eyebrows weren't in, and now they are, and thick thighs weren't in. Now being
Mhm.
strong is, like, such a more common thing for a woman, which is so awesome. You see more women in the weight section at the gym, you see like I wrote on there, I did a high rocks and like I did struggle with an episode, which I can talk about after with body dysmorphia after that. But like I was like also like, whoa, look at all these badass women I'm around that are like all different shapes and sizes, but like working towards one goal. And like, look how badass women have gotten. And I think that I'm one of those people that like have really good days with it. And I can turn it around and be like in my late 20s and early 30s, because I'm 32, about to be 32 on Friday. I can do the most activity I've ever done. Like I grew up in Saskatchewan, so I didn't hike, and like now I we did a 40-mile in 3 days in Washington this summer, and I've hiked Havasupai, and then I did my high rocks. I mountain bike now, and I've done mountain bike races. Like I'm so much more active and stronger now than I was. So I wish my younger self, I was like, look at the badass you'll become with sports or activity. But I really struggled with like my sister. I thought she had always had a more narrow face and like all these things, and then comparison. Like, and what's the phrase? It's the thief of joy or whatever. Like, I sadly am, and I am occasionally, Lauren will say, a pessimist. So like I think because of all the change in my life, I've I don't do well with disappointment. So I sometimes prepare for the worst type attitude. And so like I'm very into college football. So like this year I was finally like, you know what? I pre-bought my flight to Ole Miss for the playoffs. And most people were like, oh, that jinxed it. And I was like, oh no, I think I'm gonna manifest that we make it. And Lauren was like, oh my God, she's changed. So I tried it, but I think from so much changing, constantly moving and like getting used to being in Florida, moving to Arizona, I've just been through a lot that like if I prep myself for the potential worst, my parents called me Debbie growing up because there's that SNL
Debbie
skit Debbie
Downer,
Downer.
yeah.
And so my mom would be like, wah, wah. And like I am a very positive person and kind and I have a lot of energy, but like I'm the type that like will be somewhere and I'm like, it's a different conversation. I'm like, did you hear about that person that got murdered last night?
Oh
So
my God, you're that girl. You're the boner killer. Oh no,
I
Krista.
know.
Oh no. That's funny. We have people in our lives too that are just like we will do that like over their shoulder when they're talking, like
Yeah,
for
I
like the
know.
boner
So
that's
it's just
being
so funny because
killed.
I'm like super positive with like most things, but like then we'll either talk about what I just brought up or people are like, no way. And then it was funny because I was just on a trip. I can't remember who it was. It will come back, but I think we were on a oh, we had a friend in a car on the way to the Suns game. And he did that. And my boyfriend looked at me and busts out laughing because he's like, oh my God. And I was like, I'm not alone. And I was like, it's not me. It's like finally somebody else. But I've been working on that. But that kind of again when I was younger, I went through like the ebbs and flows of like, I'm so badass. Look at what I'm doing. I'm
Mhm.
strong and strong is good. And like, I got told so much growing up that like, you're not fat. You're strong. I even had a client, like not at Streamline, but years ago. First session, she looks at me and after I brought her back and she's like, you're not skinny, but you're not fat. And I'm
Like
like,
I don't need your feedback, bitch.
I did a workout that night, which is not, again, I shouldn't have done it for that matter, but like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, and I one time was getting a dress altered 4 years ago, and the lady that was also there, they thought I was going to prom. So because I just look
You look young.
I know,
You look
which
young.
is never great in the future, but like I was like, no, this is my bridesmaid dress. And then this lady there, I was asking the alteration lady, like, it doesn't matter if I kind of lose some weight, like, because I'm trying and like, will it still fit? And this lady's like, you got the in build right now, like same kind of thing, like muscular but not skinny. And I was like, what the fuck? Like
Yeah.
I struggle with this and like,
Yeah.
but then I go through, so that's the thing is um, I know I had prepped with Lauren, I know you don't like the word, like, the victim mentality type
Yeah.
thing, but I went through that of I'd go through, like, the, like, "Why?" Because I really struggled with, "Why can't I eat the whatever the fuck I want?" But, like,
Yeah.
Bob and Joe, whatever at Ole Miss can, like, eat, or even in late in their 20s, because in college, some people I was always somebody that had to watch what they ate and be
Mhm.
active
Mhm.
because I put on weight really easy,
Mhm.
and it's just hormones or family or genetics, whatever. But, like, I then would struggle with after working really hard to try to lose weight, why can I not eat whatever, and that person can go eat and still be
Yeah.
skinny fat or whatever, but then, like, the reminder of, well, can they go run a high rocks or can they go run 5 mile, like,
Right.
so I go through, like, these whatever, which in the last year has been really positive for me because I'm on my grind with activity, just getting movement in, but I've also been working with a nutritionist that's really great that, like, we've been working on my relationship with food and more of,
Mhm.
like, it's fuel my body, which is easy to think of some days, but more of, like, protein and blah, 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 but, like, not feeling guilty. I love Raising Cane's, so, like, not feeling guilty when I
Mm.
eat bad, but, like, I also and my it's hard, my significant other, we have opposite builds, so he's very lean and smaller,
Mhm.
and I'm very muscular, so I'm hoping our kid is, like, the Mecca someday when I have a child, but, like, it's hard being with a partner that's also different build, and if his family's all very lean, and so, like, I see attributes of the body dysmorphia as I age, but it really was more of, like, when I was younger, I also hyperfixated, which was probably either anxiety or undiagnosed ADHD, but, like, I would fixate on something wrong with my body and then just go in on it.
Yeah.
So, like, take picture, take a picture, take a picture, and, like, I even remember one Christmas break, I came home from Ole Miss and my retainer on the back of my Gap had broken. My mom was like I, like, kept taking photos and my Gap was opening back up, and she was like, "Krista," like,
Stop.
she'd even and I don't blame her for this, but she had said even and it stuck a little bit. I love my mom, but she had said, like, "You're stealing all the joy," or something, and I was like, "Oh my gosh," like and in college, there's people that might listen know Yik Yak, where before I met my boyfriend, there's this thing called Yik Yak, it's apparently still a thing. It's basically modern age can you can bully someone, but, like, you can post anonymously on it, and Ole Miss is a small enough school that, like, things are it's big, but it's not big, like, you know of people, and I worked campus rec, so, like, I knew a lot of people coming in and out of there, and I had my classes in that building, but, like, I had lost some weight in college, and I somebody posted a photo on there of, like, my a weight loss photo of me in a mirror, cute crop top, whatever. And then somebody had like said I was attractive, but then somebody was like, you know what's not attractive for her? Like how much she talks bad about herself. And I was like, whoa, where's this coming from? And then some other weird things were said that I was like, what the hell? But like that kind of struck again of like, I can't be a pessimist. Like I was a big mental health advocate in high school when I moved my senior year. This kind of still went into body dysmorphia, but a kid at my school in Mesa had unfortunately killed himself. I went to Red Mountain, and his funeral was at my church. Technically, I'm not very religious, but my stepdad is a very progressive pastor, so he's who you'd want in religion. He's awesome, and very loving and for people. But I had stood up and been like, I'm gonna make a difference at my school,
Right.
and I knew I moved that year, so I didn't. I knew people, but like I started a club called Everybody Love Everybody,
Mm.
and literally, like, the next day, somebody made a page called Everybody Hate Everybody and, like, told me to put a gun to my head and kill myself. And then, like, I was like, "I'm trying to help people." And then again, it's trying to remind myself of why am I doing this? I'm doing this
Yeah.
to show that everybody has their own shit and that they can be friends. And his dad would bring pizza, so people mainly probably came for that. I won best new club. But, like, and that was the thing is, like, I put myself out there, though, a lot.
Yeah.
So, like, I thought I was a big mental health advocate, so I'd record YouTube videos and, like, now I go back on my Facebook, I'm like, delete, 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 delete. But, like, I really put myself out there. My mom used to be like, "Krista, if you're gonna put yourself out there," 'cause I do thrive off helping others, but I did always thrive from, like, the positive
Yeah.
feedback.
Yeah.
So, I did get some, and I am so proud of myself for doing it, but, like, along my whole life, I've searched for some validation for sure, and so, like, in the end, it was really awesome, and I look back and I'm proud I did it, but, like, I put so much of myself out there, and that was the same with talking about my weight loss and, like,
Right.
my body that a lot of as I got older, people were like, "Thank you for being so transparent," and even I think I wrote on the thing with High Rocks this year, it was so badass, I did one if people don't know High Rocks, it's like the new CrossFit thing, but yeah,
Right.
I was so proud of myself, but not till 3 days later, like,
Right.
I left that night, I cried at home to my boyfriend that I was like, "Why didn't I get a faster time?" And my partner is amazing, and she helped carry us too, but, like, why didn't I do better? It was the comparison shit,
Yeah.
like, why did that person that I know from my gym do faster than me when I trained harder? Or, like, why did like, so getting pictures from it, I, like, look strong and I look badass, but I'm like, "Look at my body, why do I look so fat?" And I, like it luckily, instead of becoming an episode, it took me, like, a night, and my nutritionist was even like, "Girl, give yourself a night, like, tomorrow it will pass." And we
Yeah.
work with a lot of Ironman athletes, and they're the same of, like, if you're so used to PRing on things, like half marathons or different stuff, like, when you finally don't do what you had thought, I'm like, "Why am I so hard on myself?"
Yeah, and then that's just the comparison game in
It's
general is terrible,
Yes.
so,
So
yeah.
fine, luckily on this one, when I was younger, it probably would've lasted longer, but, like, the next day, I was like, "Wait, I'm a badass." I'm
Right.
like,
And
"No, I look good." I got one good picture of a video of my tush from behind and was
perfect.
suddenly like,
Ride that one.
"Yeah."
I love it. Oh, Krista, thank you so much for coming on and
Yeah.
sharing. We'll put your information on the website. Tell people how to find you, how to connect with you
Yeah,
so we
so
can
you
wrap up.
can find me from I think the Instagram is Streamline Performance is on there, or mine is the Pelvic Wonder Woman. We I love to get on if people ever have questions or you want to do a consult call or anything, we hop
Yeah.
on the phone and kind of navigate like should they come for pelvic floor and all that stuff and like what's best for them. But we also have a website for Streamline Performance PT. And yeah, that's kind of the realm with that. But
That's
they can come in for anything from incontinence to diastasis recti, C-sections is something we didn't get into, but that's a whole just the things that you might not even think you need help with. But if you just don't feel normal as a woman,
yeah.
reach
Yeah,
out.
reach out. Absolutely. So again, thank you so much for
Yeah, thank
coming
you
and
for
spending
having me.
time. So that's our time for today. If something hit, stirred, or lit a fire under you and you've got thoughts, questions, or a story you're ready to share, slide into our DMs or email us at ladies@letsgetnakedpodcast.com. And if you believe in these conversations, help us keep them rolling. Follow, share, rate, review, do all the things. And we will catch you next time. That's a wrap.